Sometimes you feel like maybe being in a different place in life will make a retry a little better. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back today to talk about maybe a couple redos that I'd like to maybe get to my life. What this is, guys, is going to be some books that maybe I've tried before, or hell, maybe I've read before, and maybe I want to know if the experience is different, or maybe I'll like it better on a retry or something like that. So this is going to be 10 books that I would like to try again. Now, first I want to say that these aren't ranked or anything, but I am going to put them into little subcategories. Now, what those subcategories are is one is DNF. I did not finish the book and I had no intention of ever going back, but you know, I'm older, more mature now. Maybe I would like them better on a retry. A start over would be one that I've started before, never really meant to shelve it or not finish it. But I feel like at this point enough times went by that I'd probably have to go ahead and restart it to do it again. The third one will be fresh expectations. Maybe if I'm going into this book with a better set of expectations, maybe I was sold the wrong way on it before, and now thinking about it a different way, maybe I would enjoy it a bit more. And then the last one will be rereads. There are a couple of books that I've read when I was younger, or maybe not even that long ago, and I think maybe reading them at this point in life, you know, with a lot more different series under my belt and stuff, maybe I would appreciate a little more. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to begin, guys, with the DNFs, the big ones, the ones that you think that you would never, ever return to. Now, you've heard me talk about Brent Weeks on the channel and why I felt like he's really let me down in 2 series before. And no, guys, I'm not going back to Lightbringer. That's not happening. But I wouldn't mind giving Night Angel another try. Now, my problems with Night Angel, and I talked about this at length, with that when it came out, is it felt like he couldn't decide if he wanted to be YA or if he wanted to be grimdark. And it seemed like he just played Assassin's Creed one weekend and he read the First Law trilogy and said, how do I mash those into one thing? But then put like a little bit of twinkling of the tween crowd in there. That's what it kind of felt like. Being sold as, oh no, this is one of the great, you know, if you love like First Law, I think you'd really dig this. I don't know why anyone would ever make that comparison with the First Law, but I think I went into it with the wrong expectations. Now, I still have my problems with Brent Weeks as a writer. I do think he's a very talented writer, and I've talked about that. And I feel like the people who really are Brent Weeks fans don't understand that I say I do think he's a talented writer. This is like the later Metallica albums where you feel like you got so much potential. Why are you not using it to your fullest? Why are you so worried about what everyone else says? Just right, man. That's kind of how I felt about Brent Weeks, because he always felt like he had to put like that little twist into it. But maybe this time, you know, with my expectations a little different, maybe I would enjoy Night Angel on a second try. Who knows? If not, you know, hey, then I'll know for sure. But I wouldn't mind going back and trying it again, because I have that nice hardcover signed, you know, limited edition version from Brent Weeks. So maybe that's playing into it a little bit. Next up would be going back to the Inheritance Cycle, and I gotta wonder, guys, would the third time be the charm? Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, you've just kind of aged on this. Look, I reread Aragon a couple years ago, and I enjoyed it. Sometimes I think there's nothing wrong with going back to just traditional, you know, been there before, give me all the tropes fantasy. I have no problems going back to that sometimes. I like to always ground myself in this genre and say that's some of the things that I love about it, right? So I have no problems with those things. The problem I have is, for whatever reason, I've tried reading that series twice, and I've stopped in the exact same place with Eldest both times. So I'm thinking that I would want to, I think I'd be okay with Aragon. I remember that quite frequently, but I have to just kind of begin with Eldest again and see if I can finally get through that series. One reason is because I have a video on this channel ways back when I first got started telling everybody why they should read the Inheritance Cycle, and then I've never actually finished it. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's part because they are going to be making that, they're supposedly making a new series on Disney Plus for the Inheritance Cycle, and I think that'd be perfect place for it. And I think maybe I would like to share that with my kids, and who knows, maybe we can read these together. I don't know. We will find out. But I'd like to just, you know, it feels like that's just like an unfinished quest, because I started it so many years ago, and I've still never been able to make my way through it. So that's just kind of like a, I don't know, why not? And lastly of the DNFs would be Emperor of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. It's the third book in the Broken Empire trilogy. The other one that I was sold on, this is like the best thing since the First Law, and I didn't feel like it was anything like First Law. Not exactly that people told me it was like First Law. They said if you enjoyed First Law, you'd probably enjoy this. I never really understood why people like Jorg at all. I mean, like, I thought with Grimdark was like, yeah, you got morally great characters. You find yourself usually rooting for them one way or the other, right? And this one is just like, I thought the guy was a sociopath, so I was just never really able to get into it, and I quit with like 300 pages left. So I think I still remember the first 2 books quite well, so I would probably just go back and read Emperor of Thorns, but that's one that just, I mean, so many people that I respect love the series. And I feel like maybe I was just missing something. So maybe if I just go back to it now, just, knowing what to expect, maybe I dig a little more. Because I like Prince of Thorns a lot, I bet Emperor of Thorns just got to the point where it's like, okay, no, it's just not going the direction that I was really, really hoping for with this character. But, who knows upon revisiting. How about some ones I would have to start over? Now, these were books I never really meant to shelve permanently. Just kind of took a break from them. And I'm going to have to go back to them. Now, the first one, obviously, guys, is going to be Told the Hounds by Steven Erikson, because I do want to finish Malazan. I did say I needed a break, and I think most people understood that, and they respected that. The big question I always get is, when are you going back? Like, I did a live stream the other day. It was, when are you going back to Malazan? When are you going back to Malazan? When it feels right. When it feels right. But I will have to start. I think I got about 200 pages in Told the Hounds when I said I just wasn't enjoying it right now. I think Reaper's Gale burned me out a little bit. And I think I need to start this one over, because you know what it's like with a Malazan book, guys. You don't know what's going on half the time. You know even less if you try to pick up, in the middle of the book, or really not that far. 200 pages in Told the Hounds really isn't that far. But I'd probably go ahead and start that one back over and get back on it. So again, guys, I really do like Malazan. 2 books are kind of iffy. Well, actually, 1 book's kind of iffy. 1 book I really just did not care for in Reaper's Gale. But with the series, it's a commitment, and it's a lot of energy and time and dedication. That's all. So I know people think that it's like a hostage video when I say that I enjoy it. I do enjoy the world. I do. I just feel like trying to put it on a race, trying to put a time limit on it, was really, really hindering my enjoyment of it. So when I go back to it, and I will go back to it, just don't know when yet, it will have to be starting over with Told the Hounds, and then I would probably just read the next 2 right after and go ahead and wrap that journey up. The next one, guys, would be going back to The Witcher with Time of Contempt. Now, with Time of Contempt, I don't know what it was. Something about it when I read it at the time, something just did not click with me. I work in finance. I didn't like how much time he was spending talking about poll tax and stuff like that. But really, to me, it felt like it was getting away from Geralt. And that's one of the big criticisms I've heard of the series, is that it just gets so far away from Geralt. And I don't know if that's something that I wanted to really dive into, because, I mean, with the first 2 books, Sword of Destiny and Last Wish, the short story collections, that's what drew me to the world. I really liked Geralt. I liked, I still call him Jaskier, but I still call him Dandelion. But, I liked Ciri. I like Yennefer. I like all those characters, but I was like, I still want Geralt to be at the front and center of the books called The Witcher. I would really want to be that. So I don't know, but I've had a lot of people ask me, with Time of Contempt, will I read it before the new season of the show starts? Well, I said, I feel like they've kind of stopped following the books, but apparently the showrunner, Lauren H., I can never remember how to say her last name, Time of Contempt is her favorite Witcher book, so she said it's going to be very, very faithful. So fingers crossed. But yeah, I definitely like to go back to that one, but I would definitely have to start over, because I really don't remember what our characters were doing at that point. So how about the next category, which is fresh expectations? Now, what does fresh expectations mean? I always say I don't let people influence how I'm going to feel about something before I go in. I'll always keep my expectations grounded. But there are sometimes some books where you have a set of expectations, be it from hype, be it from just your own personal expectations, be it from word of mouth, whatever it is. You might always have some certain kind of expectations for it. With me, the big one here, guys, it's one of my most unpopular videos on the channel. That is, of course, Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. All jokes aside about him not completing the series, when I read that book, just something about it was like, this is the book that everyone in the community is just losing their shit over. I don't understand. And I even said it in that video, guys. You're right. I didn't understand the book. I have no idea why it's so popular, because where I come from, guys, with fantasy, you still have to be able to tell a story. And everyone's like, oh, well, with me, it isn't really about the story. It's about his writing style, how beautiful his writing is. Man, there's lots of authors who are beautiful writers, and I would never really be interested in their story. Me being a character first guy, I didn't really like both. I never really bought him as a protagonist. I thought he was a bullshit artist the whole time. I know everybody can be like, well, it's an unreliable narrator. Well, I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I never really found myself endeared to the character at all. And then, of course, the story was just, Whatever, it's fine. That's kind of how I felt about it, because that book had been built up for me so much as like the greatest book of the last quarter century. You know, it was like the most important fantasy book since Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, what in the world? Did I read a bootleg copy? That's almost how I felt about it. But I was like, okay, now maybe knowing what the book is, maybe I could go back to it and enjoy it a little more. Maybe not. Maybe not. You know, who knows? But I always said that I would reread that if he ever put out Doors of Stone, you know, and then I would finally read book 2 and then read book 3 when it came out. I still think I'm safe from that bet, but I do think Name of the Wind would be one that maybe, I don't go as far as to say I would like it, but maybe I'd enjoy it a little more upon a reread. Maybe just try to understand this book that so many people whose opinion I hold on the highest level just think this is one of the greatest books ever. So maybe I could actually understand that, because I want to, you know, I want to help me help you. That's kind of how I feel about it. I want them to help me understand what it is that I missed about that book. Next one, guys, this is kind of a recent one, and it's one I shelved really quick because I just didn't think I was understanding how much energy and time and dedication I just have to put into it. This is Ship of Theseus by Doug Dorst. Story was conceived by J.J. Abrams. It's kind of like an interactive book. The way I was kind of sold it was like it was interactive, it was immersive and stuff like that. But it was never going to be a book that would take you a long, long time to read. And seriously, guys, I read that book for off and on for 2 weeks, and I was on like page 50 because there's just so much stuff in it. You know, there's the main story, then there's the story in the margins, then there's all the extra material inside, and you just get completely wrapped up in that. And before you know it, 2 hours went by and you've read 5 pages. So it was just one that I said, I don't think I have the mental capacity for this right now. So that would be one that I think with going in with fresh expectations, knowing what that book is and knowing I've got nothing else on the schedule, I can focus just on this, then I think maybe I would be able to put more time and the energy into it that's really needed. Because right now I was like, no, things are nuts at work. Kids are about to start back to school. You know, scouts are starting back. I've got other stuff I want to read. Yeah, I can't dedicate this much time to this one book right now. So that's one that I say with fresh expectations, going back to it in the future, maybe I'd be able to give it a much better try than I did this go around. But yeah, that requires a ton of time and commitment. Lastly, guys, I got to talk about some rereads here. Now, these are ones that I've read at a younger age, maybe somewhat recently, but it's just something that I feel like I would enjoy maybe more on a reread than I did the first time. I got to begin with Red Rising, guys, by Pierce Brown. And I know that some people are like, what? Wow, because they know I love Red Rising. I did not really care for book number 1 when I read it. You know, it's one of my oldest reviews on the channel. It's terrible quality. I tell people not to watch it all the time, but they still do. But you can see I was not impressed with that book. I felt like it was Hunger Games on Mars. It didn't feel like it did anything new. And then book 2 came out and completely blew me away. And the series just took off like a rocket after that. But the first book, I feel like maybe if I revisit it, maybe knowing these characters better stuff, maybe I'll enjoy it a little bit more on a reread. And I am going to be doing that, guys. We are going to be doing a Red Rising reread leading up to the release of book number 6 in May. So that starts in January. So January of 2023, I'll be reading Red Rising again by Pierce Brown. And I think I will probably enjoy it a bit more this time. Now, I didn't hate the book. It's just, it wasn't what I wanted. I think when I went into it, I said what I wanted was like Ender's Game, and what I got was Hunger Games on Mars, and it wasn't very exciting. So, yeah, again, I think on a reread, it's going to be a much different experience. Knowing where Darrow and company eventually end up, I think it would be a great, great experience to start back at the beginning again with those characters. Next up, you probably heard me say this on the channel before about I get this reputation as a guy who hates the ending of the story, but I don't. I think it was just decisions that were made in the final couple volumes of it that really, really brought it down for me. But however, it is still a top 5 fantasy series all time for me. I'm talking, of course, about Stephen King's The Dark Tower, and the book I'm talking about is the final volume, Dark Tower number 7, aptly named The Dark Tower. Now, everyone knows that 6 is the one, Song of Suzanne. That's the one I have the biggest problems with. The thing is that book 6 soured me so much on the series that I went to book 7 with kind of my arms crossed. You know, I did talk to, there's people on the Discord that just finished it, and I still have a lot of the same gripes that they do, but I feel like maybe going into it this time, maybe some of those things won't bother me as much. I'm not sure. I'm not sure because, like I said, I started rereading it and I got through 5, and I just couldn't bring myself to read book 6 again. So it's going to happen. It's just going to happen on the Into the Multiverse schedule. So it will be going along in publication order. So when I get there, I get there. But as of right now, I think that 7 is the one that I'm most excited to revisit because I feel like maybe I would have a different experience with it this go around, having read after reading Insomnia as well, and all the supplemental material that goes along with that, and knowing what some of those things, those weird things that happened in book 7 that seemed like they came out of nowhere, knowing where they came from, maybe I can enjoy it a little bit more this time on that path of the beam. So we shall see, guys. That one will be happening. I don't know the schedule by heart, but sometime next year, most likely. And then the last one, guys, and this one I think might be surprising, it might not. I read this back in high school, and it was gibberish to me, and I never really went back to it. And I'm talking about The Silmarillion by Mr. J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, I love the original series, obviously, and I really thought that I remembered a lot more about The Silmarillion than I did. But I think what I'm remembering is stuff from the appendices, because I have read the appendices at the end of Lord of the Rings numerous times. So everything that I was bringing up with a user on the Discord named Baba, who's like a Tolkien scholar at this point, everything I was bringing up, he's like, oh no, that's in the appendices. I was like, you know what? I don't think I remember very much about the Silmarillion. So maybe I should revisit. I think, just going back and reading Fire and Blood, which George R. R. Martin calls the Grimmarillion, his version of the Silmarillion, maybe treating it more like that. I think maybe I would enjoy it a little more. I feel like I can accept something that's more of a history book now than I could when I was a teenager. After just coming off of Return of the King, and you try to read the Silmarillion, it's a big come down there, So I feel like maybe visiting that world again would help. And then maybe going on and reading Baron and Luthien and Fall of Gondolin and Children of Hurin. Reading those, I think, because that's stuff I've never done, and it's weird because I call that my favorite fantasy world, and I've never read outside of the original trilogy. So there's such a much more big world to explore there, and I think that would be a really fun cap to all the Lord of the Rings coverage that I'm kind of doing here. So getting back to Tolkien would always be something that I am really thinking that I would be anxious to do, and on a reread of the Silmarillion and having those expectations, because when I did read it, I had no idea it wasn't just a story. I think that would be the perfect time to do it. But guys, that's the 10 that I have. I'm sure there are more books I'm just not thinking of that maybe I've started and just really didn't get into. I'm sure there's a lot of classics that maybe I've started and just didn't really want to finish that I might actually appreciate a little bit more now. I don't know. I feel like I'm more receptive to those things. The closer I get to becoming a classic myself. But those are my 10, guys. Do you have any books that you've either DNF'd or started and maybe you just want to reread, maybe that you think you would enjoy a little more this go around? Why don't you go ahead and drop them in the comments, guys. And if you got any comments about any of these, or if you think I'll end up liking them, why don't you go ahead and let me know, guys, and I will talk to you there.